How's it going, Gas Money Nation? It's Robert and Austin with the Inside Gas Money podcast, and today we have a very special guest, Samantha Tradelius. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on today. And before we get started, could you just tell the viewers a little more about yourself and what you're doing?
Guys, I'm pumped. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am Samantha. I do lots of different things. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I've got two crazy girls that are tweening and teening. So it's a lot going on in my house. I've been an insurance professional for 25 years. So I have smiled, dialed, sold, hired, fired, done it all. I am the resident insurance girl. And in addition to that, I have a nonprofit that I founded 8 years ago called the Sparkle Foundation that focuses on single moms here in California and also in Arizona. So that's me in a nutshell. And I like to wear cheetah. I wear black all the time. And I sometimes swear.
We love it. We love it. Great
Right?
introduction. And I know you mentioned insurance too. Just like, how did you get involved with that? Because it seems like you were a go-getter since you were young.
Yes, good question. So my family owns a licensing school for insurance called Lightspeed, which I'm still very much involved with. And that's education for when you want to get your insurance license. You got to take so many hours by the state. We own the school that does that. So when I was about 17, I was working in the office and the teacher didn't show up for class one day. And there was a room full of like 80 people that had all paid to get their insurance license. And I was like, well, I guess I'm teaching class today. So I walked in and started teaching auto insurance. And I was 17. I didn't know anything, but I was like, these people pay my family's bills. So I'm going to do this. And that's how my career in insurance actually started, was teaching. Put myself through college, teaching all over California, and then graduated college and decided it was time to, like, I guess, open an insurance agency. So I did that with my dad, and then met my husband, who's in insurance, and the rest is history.
Awesome. So you mentioned college. Did you go, is there a specific degree or focus for something like that to learn more, or is it sales, or what was your focus when you went through college?
So I went to Cal State Northridge, a little bit of a matador. Okay. And I focused on business, was my major. And it was interesting. So I was involved in insurance, working for my family's business. Ended up staying in LA and living close by school and work and everything. And they were betaing an insurance program. So I was there was 7 of us in the program, and it was real estate finance and insurance, the major being, of course, business. So my degree is actually in real estate finance and insurance for my college degree. And then as far as, getting your insurance license, that's kind of a vocational program that you go through. And it's 6 days of class that you have to take a state exam with the Department of Insurance here in California.
Awesome. Yeah. And especially with a process like that, so young. I mean, when you were getting into it, obviously you had the support and mentorship from your family, but was there a lot of other mentorship that was involved in that? Just trying to learn as much as you can, any specific mentor experiences or lessons that you had along the way?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, hello, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am without the wonderful people around me that would help me. I mean, I didn't know anything about anything. And a lot of, what I would do is if I didn't know the answer, I was smart enough to go find somebody that did know the answer. And it really, you learn from them, they learn from you, and you kind of take bits and pieces and little nuggets of information and use that to kind of further your career. But yeah, I mean, mentorship now in a different seat, because now I'm 43. All right. I'm on the other side now. I mentor a lot of young women and young, kids that are, interested in getting involved with nonprofiting or business, insurance, all that stuff. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking on the nonprofit too, I mean, that's one of our goals with Gas Money, and I feel like should be a goal for anybody with business, is kind of that philanthropic side where you're helping others, helping them grow, helping learn from your lessons. So what really inspired you to get into that, creating that nonprofit? And it's called Sparkle Foundation, correct?
Called the Sparkle Foundation. Yes. I started doing the work when I was 23. Just as a young woman, wanted to do something to make the world a better place, and wasn't finding what I wanted as far as organizations that were out there. Because as you might know, a lot of organizations aren't super transparent with the way they spend money, which is kind of annoying when you're like, you have no money and you want to give money, and then the money that you're giving goes to pay someone's lunch bill. You're like, wait a sec. So originally when I started, it was I didn't find what I wanted. So I went out and created my own thing and was gifting single moms Christmas. The first year I did 2, then it was 5, and it kept growing and growing and growing till 2015. We were doing about 17 families for Christmas out of my house, and I was bringing in $35,000. People would give me money and I'd go buy Christmas gifts. And so it became apparent, hey, you could probably do a little more if you became a little legit. So, forming a nonprofit, of course, made total sense, having no idea what I was doing. And here we are 8 years later, serving over 10,000 lives, raising $2+ million, serving 4 different major geographical areas and 700 plus volunteers. It's been a journey and a fun one. But, it's one of those things that I think I always have this saying in the back of my head. It's where you have the ability, you have the responsibility, right? And so many of us are so fortunate in our lives that we will never go without or even know what it's like to not have certain things or fall on hard times. And so if we can provide, assistance to our communities in different ways, I mean, that's honestly what it's all about. And it could be kids, it could be nature, it could be education, it could be so many different things. I mean, there's so many great ways to get involved with your communities. And I love what you guys are doing by, building that community, and hopefully it can turn into some type of, philanthropic efforts.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, starting any of this, because we're still pretty much in the startup phase with Gas Money. We've been doing it since high school. Now we're both 20. Well, I think Rob's still 21. I'm 22.
Babies.
Yeah.
Babies.
So yeah, and it's kind of crazy that you were able to get into that even in through already starting, because you started your insurance firm before the Sparkle Foundation?
Yeah.
Or?
So I graduated college 2003. I was 23. And, my parents weren't ready to retire yet. So it was kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? So I decided, my dad was a life insurance guy. And I was like, well, I know how to sell like auto and home insurance because I'd been doing it a little bit. So I was like, let's start an insurance agency, because that's what you do. Right. And I didn't know anything. And you want to talk about being super hard, because like I was a woman in a primarily male dominated industry and a young woman at that. And I definitely don't fit the bill of like what normal insurance people look like. So that was always interesting too. And then with the nonprofit part, it was kind of all at the same time. I mean, I was 23. It was like right when I was starting my business, I, just decided I wanted to spend time giving back and didn't know anything about anything other than the power of purpose and doing good. And I knew I could do good. I just had to like go do it.
Yeah. And you can, I mean, obviously with the internet nowadays, I don't know how much access you were able to have. A lot of access, I think, then for self-teaching, but with the people around you, did that really help with the actual like legitimacy aspect of business and starting all of that? Or did you just kind of go and hopefully everything fell into place? Because we definitely started doing that.
That's how success is born, by the way. Like none of us have it all figured out. That's the first thing you got to realize. Throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks is like my, testimony of life. With insurance, it was, I learned a lot, and I would, pick people's brains or watch videos or read up on things. I mean, the internet was happening. I wasn't born in the dark ages, guys. Okay. There was internet and cell phones when I started. But it was definitely a different industry than it is today. And I'd learn a lot. I would definitely absorb what was around me, and, I would lose business or lose clients because maybe I didn't know what I was doing. And you make that mistake one time and then you learn, right? When it came to the nonprofit stuff, I had been, I did a lot of the gifting and everything for about 13 years before I actually formed a 501c3. So by the time I was 35, 36 was about the time I started doing, the actual Sparkle became born. And I had 10 years of business experience. I was a kind of a different creature at that point, but still really didn't know anything about running a nonprofit because it was very different, than a for-profit business. Big thing that was the biggest difference was in my work world, I had employees. So I would say, okay, Austin, you're going to be here at 9. These are the things we got to get done today. And then you can leave at 5 and you're going to get paid. Well, in my Sparkle world, everybody around me works for free. Like we don't have we don't have paid staff. We have volunteers, because every single dollar that we get goes right back out into the community. That's why I started it in the first place, right? I wanted to make sure those dollars were in the hands of the people that needed it. So that part was always really hard, to find the right people that were on the same mission and work ethic that I had and passion for what we were doing. It took me about eight years to really get the right team together that could, sing. We could sing in harmony. Because I'm a lot. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I'm a full package.
Well, I feel like you need that in business, and that really passion is the main thing you got to have. If you're going to focus on something like CCI or even going into the Sparkle Foundation, that's going to be huge because if you're not passionate about it, how are you going to get anybody else passionate about it? So with that, when it comes to forming that community, what were some of the things you did to kind of share that passion with others, or some of the areas you'd focus in the most to kind of bring that success to Sparkle?
So if you picked up, when I'm excited about something, you're going to hear about it and you're going to know about it. And that's kind of just the way I live life to begin with. When it came to Sparkle, it was like, hey, we've got these families and they need towels and sheets and bikes and crayons. Like, yeah, you need to get involved. And so I'd go out to my community, my clients, my friends, my family, and I would say, hey, look, like we need 47 boxes of crayons. Robert, can you buy them? And, people would participate. People wanted to give and find a way to give back. And maybe they didn't have a bunch of money, but they had their time. They could help wrap or they could deliver. And so this kind of just organically grew year after year. I really used social media a lot in my beginnings to promote and get the word out. And as it's grown, I mean, that's been such a great use of marketing efforts for us because you can reach a lot of people really quickly. But I mean, we have 750 people that show up to help us do stuff every year. Like we're doing it. And we're serving a lot of families all the time. So we do the Christmas, we've done backpacks historically. We're doing Mother's Day boxes this year. We do microloans for single moms, and we do enrichment scholarships all year round. So those are kind of our programs that we do. And the community, I mean, now it has taken us a long time, but we have definitely a pretty big following.
Exactly. I know you mentioned social media. It seems like, especially nowadays, there's so much negativity going around, and it's finally nice just to see stuff like this because that's what people want to see. People don't want to see all this negative news or like there's a lot going on in the world, especially today. And I feel like with nonprofits like this that are focused on empowering families, empowering single mothers, it's just nice to see. And based on that, I'm sure you have a ton of amazing stories, but is there any recently that have stuck out to you with Sparkle Foundation that really just made you feel good or really stuck out?
There's so many. I mean, of all the years, it's 21 years this year of doing it. And so the women that you hear, the stories that you hear, and, a single mom that's struggling, she doesn't necessarily, look like she's a destitute. It could be literally the person next door or your mom or your sister, or your aunt. I mean, everyone can relate to somebody that's struggling to make it make sense and raise a family. It's tough. And so, I can't tell you how many times like people have come up to me in the market and been like, oh my God, like you have no idea what you did for my family for Christmas, or a woman that comes back and nominates another woman, or, we did the Mother's Day boxes and we've gotten a ton of stories in, and they're so incredible of women that are, just going above and beyond. Right. And we ask the community to tell us their stories so we can gift them these, beautiful boxes we've created. And the stories that you hear are just like, everyone is just rips your soul out because these people are so incredible. And the kids that we get to have come and help us and be involved in something that's bigger than themselves is just the best part for me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's because we've had a few people on that they're in, the industry of helping, which is amazing. And there's got to be a lot of fulfillment that comes out of that, and emotional fulfillment that you're helping, you see what you're doing and it's actually making an effect. I'm sure there's also the other side of it where you see like I can help so many more people. There's got to be way more out there. So where is like that fulfillment aspect, or I'm sure there's just never enough because you're trying to help as many as you possibly can.
Yeah. There's some definite emotions that come into, what we do, because it's, it can sometimes be life-changing, and it's a big hat to wear and a big seat to sit in. When I started my insurance business, I really wanted to, do everything, right? Because that's what you do when you start in business. You're like, I can write all the different types of policies and serve all these different people. And when I really figured out where I could be really effective is if I was really good at one or two things, right? So I really honed in and got to know those 2 or 3 things really well. And that became my brand. When it came to Sparkle and the efforts, when we decided we were going to become like this legitimate 501c3, it was important to be really focused on the angles and the direction that we could have a direct impact on. So when you say, can we, we would want to help everybody. Yeah. I mean, hell yes. I want to help as many people as I can, but I also want to be as impactful and effective as I can. So picking those 4 key areas that we focus and really limiting it to single moms has really allowed us to be successful and to continue to be successful because we're so directed at it. Otherwise, I mean, it's really easy to go off mission and start, just wanting to help everybody. But then I find that you're not as impactful and purposeful.
Definitely. And I remember earlier on in the podcast, you had mentioned, especially with just being young, being a woman when you first started out, we've kind of related to that a little bit on the young side. You walk in a room, whether it's with investors or with other business owners, they're going to judge you because you're young. They think you don't know that much. And I mean, for you, when you started out, especially just getting in the insurance industry, which is historically male dominated and usually has a lot of older people in it instead of the younger side, what did you do to kind of build that confidence and make yourself stand out, make yourself legitimate? I mean, I'm sure you had to power through it.
Oh, I'd get beat up, man. They were so mean to me. They'd be like, is your dad coming? Are you here to take notes? No, bud, I'm here to do the work, right? No, it was really hard. And it was really hard when I didn't know my stuff, because that's when I felt I was weak. And I felt like I wasn't warranted a seat at the table because I didn't know enough or I wasn't prepared enough. And I made those mistakes a few times. The more beat up I got, the smarter I got and the stronger I got, because I was like, okay, it's not a mistake if I learn from it. And I would go and I would do my research so that when I would walk into a meeting, man, I knew everybody in the room. I knew everything about I needed to know. And, I knew the products that I was going to sell. And if I didn't know, I would watch people and their reactions to not knowing answers to things and how they would respond or how men would respond. And I was like, I can do that, right? And so, I mean, it was years and years and years of growth and learning to get to a place where now, I always say, I set the table now. Before I used to dream of having a seat at the table. And now it's a much different conversation because I can control the conversation because I know what the hell I'm talking about. But I didn't always know what that was. And it, business and success and becoming who you are as a professional. I mean, you've got to earn your stripes, guys. You have to fall down. You got to get beat up a little bit. You got to walk out of a meeting going, oh my God, I totally bombed. No, of course they don't want to do business with me because I said it like an idiot. You've got to have those moments because that's what makes you stronger and that's what makes you a better professional.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, and even going back to that too, just being young and doing all of these different things, how did you keep that organized? Did you have a focus at that time? Because I mean, us being young as well, we try to have a focus. We try to be as, organized and scheduled as possible, but there's so many different things going on when you're a young person. It's very difficult to do that. So did you do that, or was that something that you kind of learned along the way and down the line a little bit further?
I love that you guys are asking that question about balance and figuring it all out, because throw a couple kids into the mix and then let's have the conversation, right? Because I got 2 kids too. And it's a juggling act, right? It's hard to balance and manage all the different things all the time. But, you make time for the things you want to make time for. And I think that, I was actually having a conversation with somebody I'm mentoring right now. It's like, how do you design your day? I asked her, I was like, what does your day look like when you get to the office? Is it income generating activities? Is it service? Is it, taking care of boss stuff? How do you work your days every day? Because time management, I think, is the secret to success. And you fill your time with whatever you need to fill your time with. And the buckets that need to get filled, they're going to be different every single day. And I just really think it's your choice on how you want to manage that. If you want to be on fire all the time, then that's going to be your life and that's going to be your program. And you're going to see people as you guys grow up that are that's just their jam and that they can thrive in that environment. I'm not. I need a little bit of structure. But I also need to be fluid, knowing that I could just get a grenade thrown on my desk at any moment and I got to be able to manage it. Or
yeah, shit happens.
Somebody needs to be somewhere or something. You got to be able to roll with it.
Exactly. And like you said earlier, I mean, there's good things that are going to come up that you'll never expect. I mean, every business owner experiences it. And especially when you're young too, that's when you haven't experienced as much failure, and each failure seems a little more weighty. And then I feel like as you progress, as you move on, one thing we've been really trying to do is kind of start viewing these mistakes or failures that we make as lessons and learning from them. So especially when you were younger, first starting out as a businesswoman, were there any major roadblocks that you encountered or events that came up where they might have seemed very negative at first, but ended up helping you a lot in the long run?
I remember one time I had worked on this big account. It was like this big development project in LA. And it was just like I had complete control of the client. He was my client, although his partner was this other guy that like was the guy that ended up being the guy who signed on the dotted line. So I had done all this work. I'd gotten all done and I was so proud of myself, and I was going to make a lot of, like, the most money I'd ever made. Right. And this other partner, broker of record, the quote, which basically means they signed a document and took all my work and gave it to another insurance person, and it was gone, right? It was just like, poof, gone. And I had never had that happen. I didn't know what to do. I was sitting at my desk, and I remember I'd had a carrier come in, and the woman's still a friend of mine to this day. One of my markets was in, doing one of their marketing things. And I sat at my desk, you guys, and I just burst into tears. Like, I was hysterical. I was crying. I did not know what to do. I was like, how is this happening? And she looked at me and was just like, okay, like, here's this young, I was 25, 26. I mean, she was just like, go get it together. And I remember my dad being in the office, and he goes, there is no crying in insurance. And I thought, you're right, Dad. There is no crying in insurance. Like, I just got the shot. Like, this whole situation sucked, had nothing to do with me. Right. I did all the work, and now somebody else is going to get paid for it, which was devastating. But like, the lesson to be learned was like, sometimes there's things that are going to happen that are not about me. Like, this wasn't about me. This was a pissing contest between these two dudes. And one was just like, well, we're going to use my guy, not your girl. And that was that. And it was a really big learning lesson for me because, number one, I cried in front of like a market, which I should have never done, but like, whatever, she got it. And two, wasn't about me. Bad business stuff wasn't about me. And I learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a huge lesson. I mean, that's one thing. I'm sure that never happened again. Is that right?
Never. And if it ever, I felt like I didn't have control over the client, or I knew something, I would manage the situation different, like, so it wouldn't happen again. And I didn't know, as a young woman, like, I needed to have all I needed to have all the pawns out on the board, and I didn't. And so I was just involved in somebody's pissing contest, which sucked.
Yeah, it does suck. But I mean, like you said, you learn from it. And that's what we've tried to learn as much as we can is it's unpredictable. Stuff's going to come up. And the one thing you have to realize is, one, it's good to have a support system, which it sounds like your dad was there. And I mean, he told you, like, no crying in the office.
No crying in the office, girl. And I was like, God, okay, Dad, I get it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's nice having that. And then just like even the feelings of like failure, like, it feels so bad up front, but like you said, you ended up learning from it and moving on from it. And I feel like when you're young, especially, there's so much pressure from society, from the world, to have everything figured out. But like you said, it sometimes takes a little longer, and you have to be able to look for those lessons in things that might not seem like lessons at all. And that's one thing we've really been trying to kind of encourage other young people to do, because there's going to be times where you just want to sit down at your desk and cry, like you did, and we've done before, and everybody has done.
You have to sit down at your desk and cry. You have to fail. Like, if you're not failing, you're not doing it right. Because I always say, like, if everything was super easy, then everyone would be doing it. And like, what's the point? Right? It's
Exactly.
Life to be hard, and it's what builds your character, and it is what makes you successful.
And one thing about success too that I really like, especially with your story, is, after going to college, especially being in the insurance industry, it would have been very easy for you to get a job in insurance and start your career that way. So where did you, I know obviously you probably got a lot of motivation from your family, but what was really that motivation to take that big risk and start a business of your own?
I come from family business. So for me, like, I've actually never, the only boss I've ever had was my first job was like at Nova's Bagels. When I was 16 years old, I had someone telling me what to do. Other than that, I've always worked for myself. And it's super weird. Like, I always sit and like watch people that have, that have their employees, and I'm like, God, I would never be able to have that someone talk to me like that or do that. But on the other side of things, like I have a lot of risk that a lot of people aren't comfortable with, making payroll, making rent, so having someone come at you being sued, all those things. Like I've had that all happen. And I don't know, I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's like, I don't know if there's one thing I could say like, oh, this is why I did this. It was just, I came from a place of seeing my parents have a business. And so to me, it made total sense to like, just continue on that path versus going and working for a big insurance company. I think sometimes like, man, my life would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, for sure. I guess this is a little bit of a different pathway with the conversation, but I just want to see with the roots of LA. So we're Michigan boys. We grew up in Michigan. Rob, he's just actually now graduating from Florida State in Tallahassee. So, but it's definitely night and day from Michigan to, LA lifestyle, what we've heard. Does that have a huge impact on your go-getter, extremely motivated attitude? Or I guess just talk me through the roots and everything like that.
Well, I'm originally from Washington, is where my parents are from.
Yeah.
I grew up in Thousand Oaks, which is like a suburb of LA. So, going out to like Hollywood and being in the scene was like definitely part of my life. But I currently live up in the Bay Area. I live in San Francisco. And, I'm a California girl through and through. I don't know that I think it's where you live has anything to do with it. Cause I mean, I've interviewed almost 200 women all over the world, and they're in all kinds of places, and they're, going out there and getting it. So I think it's more about like what's in you than
Right.
where you are. I don't think it has anything to do with it, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely different parts of the country that are more vibrant, if you will, than others.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I mean, for me, when I first got to Florida State, like Austin said, we grew up in a small town in Michigan, lots of farmland everywhere. And when I first got down here, I mean, it's really busy, and there's a lot of competition, a lot of people moving. So I think, and just touching on Austin as well, like that's kind of where we realize, like, if you're going to be in an environment like that where everybody's moving so fast, that kind of motivates you to move faster. But I feel like nowadays too, with social media, you can see that every day on your phone.
You could be anywhere. I mean, I just got back from New York. I don't know if you've ever been to New York. Like, you want to go be on the pulse of Americana. That's like, it's insane. I mean, you're like walking down the street and there's like 9,000 people, and they're all like in suits and busy and on their phones, and oh my God. And that's totally different from like, you look at like an LA, San Francisco as being crazy. Like, that's crazy. But I also think like it's a way you want to live your life too. Like, so like at this stage in my life, like I wouldn't want to live in that environment just because I'm on the other side. If I was your age, 20 years old, put me in New York City. Like I would love that fast-paced environment as a younger person for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then touching too, first of all, I wanted to ask, just Sparkle in general, how'd you come up with the name?
It's really kind of a funny story. So I was done doing the wrapping for like year 15. We'd done 17 families in my house, and I was like sitting in my living room. I was actually sitting in the kitchen, and I had this sparkly tablecloth sequins, and I'm like, that's kind of what it is. Like, I feel like I sparkle. I sparkle inside. I'm sparkling outside. I feel like the person that you're handing the gifts off to is a sparkle. They're getting sparkled. And I was like, sparkle. And so I did a bunch of research, made sure it wasn't taken. And it surely wasn't. And then I hired like a graphic design person to design the logo, which has little sparkles on it. And away we went. But it was basically based off a tablecloth.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because when I thought of it, when I first saw it, it's like helping people like sparkle in their eye, like making them
that's
happy.
what it is though.
And it's a great backstory. And just touching on being a mother too, we both of us, we're not married or anything yet. We both want to have kids in the future, but just like, how has that kind of changed? Like, if at all, just your motivation and your passion behind like making your kids proud, giving them a role model to look up to, and how has that kind of impacted your mission with Sparkle?
It's a good question. So my girls are 13 and 11. They're insane. We'll just start there. But they only know Sparkle. So since their existence, mom's, the house turns into a big warehouse around Christmas. So there's 5,000 backpacks here. I mean, they know that this is what we do. And they're super involved. My oldest is actually on our board. So she attends meetings and, helps us make decisions and participates at a high level. They're really involved with the process and being a part of the community in a way that's like much more than I could ever possibly have dreamt. And to see them talk about what we do and how we do it it's pretty cool. It's not very often that like mom is cool, right? Because I'm, mom. But just last month, I was awarded a Jefferson Award, which is like it's kind of like an Academy Award of like nonprofiting. It's a big deal. Like Oprah has one. Okay. So we got to go downtown to like CBS in the city. And a lot of people will bring different people. I brought my girls. I bring my kids. I bring them a lot because they're a part of my environment just as much as I'm a part of theirs. And my oldest looks over at me and she goes, Mom, this is pretty cool. And I thought, okay, like I've done it all. Like if my 13-year-old thinks I'm cool, mom is successful. But they are very involved and they are very much a part of everything we do. And, having kids and being a mom was like not one of those things I wasn't one of those girls that was like, I want to grow up and be a mom. Like I wanted to grow up and change the world. That was what I wanted to do. And then I met my husband. And then of course the girls came around and being a mother and I have 2 daughters. I mean, it's the most rewarding, challenging, like disastrous, like all the emotions all the time. And it's so amazing. Like it's the coolest part it's my best job by far and my hardest job by far.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change a bit.
No, that's awesome. And having them involved, that's got to be super cool. And especially with the oldest being on the board, her coming up with ideas and things like that. Has she surprised you, or are you're expecting like she's probably going to come up with some cool stuff?
I'm expecting excellence. Let's be honest. No, I mean, she's super cool. I mean, she does have, her name's Bardot. So she's very like fitting of her name. She's very like smart in a different way than I am. She's very detailed in a way that I'm not. Like I have her on the email. So we have our info@Sparkle email. Like I have the kids answering the emails. And if they don't know the answers, they send it to me and I'll do it. I mean, they can respond. They know what the answers are. Awesome. I mean, she's, they can set up an assembly line. They can direct traffic. They can, get the noise away from me. I mean, they're great. They're totally into it. And I love when they talk about it to other people about what they're doing. And the part of, why single moms was my grandma was a single mom. And that's why, that's why I started supporting single moms because of the way my dad, my aunt, my uncle were brought up. And so they know it's such a legacy to their great grandma, my grandma. And so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And touching a little more on it, I mean, we looked at your website and kind of the mission and the inspiration that you did get from your grandma, especially growing up in the 50s as a single mom, sure was probably one of the toughest things, especially back in the day. But how did that really inspire you? I mean, is she like your main inspiration, your main hero?
She's everything. Yeah, she's everything. She's no longer with us, but she was just like 5 foot nothing, full of piss and vinegar, like just next level. And she did it all by herself. I mean, she was raising 3 kids in this era that did not embrace her. I mean, she was shunned. Like she couldn't go to the church. Like nobody wanted anything to do with her. And it was very traumatic. But she never asked for help. And, the stories I would hear about the way that she would just do and kept going, it was like, whoa. So when I became able to do something, I originally had gone to the post office and got letters to Santa that the kids would write. And that's how I started. And these kids would write, dad was gone or dad was in jail or dad wasn't around. And so I don't know, like even subconsciously, like initially, like I gravitated there because I knew that was somebody that was like her. And like, I knew her story. I knew her. I knew who this was. And, it just grew and grew and grew. And, it's incredible because single moms are such an overlooked category and yet the hardest working out there. I mean, they do so much more than anybody ever knows.
Yeah, they're resilient and having
They're
that
badass.
solidarity. Yeah, they are badass. And I mean, especially having that solidarity too, it's gotta just feel so good to upbring everybody together and know that they're not alone out there. Because that's the worst part is if you're struggling with something and you might be afraid to reach out or afraid to ask for help. And foundations like this, especially with single mothers, it's amazing just kind of bringing that community together and knowing they're not alone in this. You guys can all fight together. So it's an amazing story. And I guess just finishing up, one question we always ask, since most of our viewers are young adults, is just looking back, if you could choose one piece of advice to give yourself when you were 20 years old, not knowing anything of what you were going to accomplish, all the amazing things you were going to do, what would that piece of advice be?
Do it. Like, what are you waiting for? Do it. I always like the line, like, you're young enough to know better, but still old. What is it? You're young enough to know better, but still old enough to screw it all up, or but vice versa, something like that.
Right.
I like everyone will always say, I get asked the question a lot, like, how do you, or what did you, or this or that. And it's like, honestly, you just do it. Like, you do it. And if you screw up, okay, you try something different. And that's how success, in my opinion, is made. Like, we all don't have the answers. You're not supposed to have the answers. That would make life not fun. And even when times are like awful and like the stuff, you get the account stolen from you and you're like, my life is over. I don't know what to do. Like, look at 20 years later. Like, I'm like, I'd love to call that guy now. Right. It's like, you gotta just do it. That's the thing. And have fun and smile more.
Yes. More positivity.
Smile.
Definitely. So, no, I love it. It's been an amazing conversation, and it's so powerful what you're doing with the Spark Foundation, what you're doing with mentoring people, helping young women, helping single mothers. And hopefully, I mean, one day we'll see you. I know you already got the award in LA, but hopefully one day we'll see you on the national news, just sharing your stories with all the change you've made. So that's amazing.
You'll be like, there's that crazy girl in the cheetah jacket. We
The
know
cheetah
her.
print. Yeah. But no, that's awesome. And I guess just before we go, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your story, reach out to you? Go ahead and plug some socials or some connection points.
Yeah, best place is just my name, SamanthaTradelius.com. You can get to everything there: podcast, book, insurance, Sparkle, my shenanigans, all those things.
Awesome. Well,
All
cool.
right.
Thank you so much, Samantha. We had a great conversation. And like we always say at the end of our podcast, go get
Go
that
get
gas
that
money.
gas money.